Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this, the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And it's going to be another episode of I have absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for Rachel Reeves because she put herself in this position. However, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't also touch upon the other massive embarrassment that Labour had this weekend, in which their ex-Defence Minister, Ivor Kaplan, had been arrested after a paedophile sting.
You told this child that you was going to go and meet him.
That wasn't because Stephen will be at work.
At 1 o'clock, you said that you was going to go and meet him at quarter to.
If we could. I don't know, trains, etc.
Yeah,
etc.
you see.
I don't know.
But wait, here's the slippery thing. You said you had no intention, but now you concede that actually, I might have been planning to take this child to meet Stephen. That's his bag as well. That's possible. Yeah, I told you to get your bottle of water back.
And sweets.
Right, I'm just going to search you before we go anywhere, okay? How many loads have you got on?
This, by the way, was done just 6 days after the former Labour MP for Hove emerged from obscurity to offer his thoughts on Elon Musk. Tony Blair's former Defence Minister went on GB News last Sunday to offer his thoughts on the Tesla billionaire's tweets about Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips. Such posts, Kaplan declared, were not acceptable, and it would be even more unacceptable if he was to become a serious and senior member of the Trump administration. And fast forward less than a week, and what's he been up to? Well, it transpires he was arrested today on suspicion of child sex offences after a sting by paedophile hunters. Say what you will about nonce hunters, but clearly they do some good work sometimes. Anyway, this guy was a weirdo anyway. I'm not going to bother posting any of the actual tweets because pretty much every screenshot has a penis in. But he was quite obsessed with going around Twitter finding pictures of effectively just men who looked ripped and also are happy to show pictures of their penis on Twitter and soliciting them for gay sex. I'm not even joking. It wasn't a thing he was doing once or twice. I have seen at least 3 different examples of it. And at that point, it's a pattern. But anyway, we're not here to talk yet again about the grooming gangs. I think I've covered that quite enough last week. Until there's more, frankly, major news about it, that's where it's going to stay. For now, we are talking about the other major embarrassment from the Labour Party. And, well, that is the fact that Rachel Reeves is at risk of being frozen out of government. Yes, business is cold on Rachel Reeves. Will the Prime Minister freeze her out? Crisis? What crisis? On the anniversary of Jim Callaghan returning from abroad to downplay the winter of discontent, the Chancellor may understand how he felt. Though I will say, I don't think we're quite at that point yet. At least our dustbins are still being collected, at least in my area, and there aren't bodies piling up on the street because people are refusing to bury them, so it could always be worse. When the British Chamber of Commerce gathered members on Wednesday for a meeting with a Treasury Minister to discuss the state of the economy and how the government might kickstart growth, they had expected to see Lord Livermore, the Financial Secretary. Several were surprised when he turned up with Rachel Reeves. Aides say that when the Chancellor heard from Livermore who he was seeing, she said, "I'm coming too." In the meeting, voices were raised against the government's decision to treat business like a magic money tree in the budget. Where have we heard that phrase before? Those who accompanied Reeves left the meeting very clear what business now wants if the government is serious about growing the economy. The Chancellor heard the same message from the CBI. In every one of these meetings, the one thing they keep coming back to is regulation, an ally said. They think it's holding them back. Well, it's that and an awful lot more, but regulation would be good to cut back. Reeves will try to show that she has listened this week by hauling in a group of Britain's leading regulators to tell them you've got to get serious about growth. The Chancellor will tell the Competition and Market Authority, Ofcom, Ofgem, an environmental agency, and the Financial Conduct Authority. These are all quangos I would like to see completely destroyed, by the way. I want your ideas about how you're going to stop regulation for risk and go for growth instead. And this is the problem we run into every time. These are government agencies, independent ones allegedly, who have regulatory power and are not willing to cut it themselves. Why aren't they willing to cut it themselves? Because guess what? Having power means that you have purpose. And if you have purpose, that means it's very hard for the government to cut your budget. So once again, nothing's actually going to happen here. It's just, once again, ministers going toward the regulators, who are supposed to be independent, saying, hello, we'd like you to make these changes, and then they don't make those changes because they're, one, independent, and two, don't want to let go of their power because it justifies their own funding. This is why reform will be good, because they will tell them to get stuffed. But despite the constant pattern of the Tories trying to go to regulators to stop them regulating, Reeves is just trying to do the same thing. She plans to see 16 regulators, half this week and the rest the week after. Last year the Prime Minister told them to come up with ideas on how they were going to boost growth. We need to see that now. Oh, have they done anything? No. Oh, we'll just ask them again. The Chancellor hopes to foster competition among them in a drive for the best ideas. Why would there be... The only competition they have is to put more regulation in because it gives them more power and justifies more of the budget. Come on, get real. This is what happens when you have someone who pretends to be an economist but was actually dealing with complaints as your Chancellor. If this smacks of panic, the Treasury stresses that Reeves started planning in November for a speech on growth at the end of this month. How long does it take to prepare a speech? She has known for 3 months that the Office for Budget Responsibility watchdog will deliver a verdict on March 26 about whether she is stuck to the new fiscal rules she is unveiling in October's budget. Imagine if it turns out she's broken them. That'd be so funny. The decree... And it's actually quite likely that, by the way, because today it's actually turned out that gilt yields are at 5%, which means it's got even more expensive to actually borrow, to the point where the headroom that was supposed to be 10 billion is nowhere near 10 billion. It's probably closer to 1 billion. And so she probably is actually going to be breaking her own fiscal rules. And if that ends up happening, it's just going to be a joke. That decreed that she must balance day-to-day government spending by 2029. Reeves left herself just £10 billion of headroom after the budget stay within the tramlines. On Tuesday, Capital Economics concluded she is £1 billion from the edge. Oh, it's exactly how I predicted. But it can be revealed that the Treasury actually thinks the situation is worse than that. Treasury officials said to her that if it was today, she would be in the red and would have broken the day-to-day fiscal rules. Oh, never mind. We don't need the OBR to say it. The Treasury have just said it themselves. Or at least they're not confirming that they've broken fiscal rules, but they're not denying it either. Anyway, on to details as to why this is so bad. The crisis, if that's what it is, was brought to a head by a 2-week sell-off of UK government bonds known as gilts, which began last week and continues this week. Yields on 10-year gilts rose to 4.7%, the highest this century, and higher than the aftermath of the Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget on 2022. Well, see you in court, the Times. Quite amazing that this is happening right now and they're still carrying water for Labour's attack line on Liz Truss, but whatever. I understand it's so within the zeitgeist. I understand why they've written it, but I really hope Liz Truss does take people to court over it. The Treasury is right to say that the cost of bonds is rising everywhere, in part because the markets anticipate Donald Trump slapping tariffs on goods after his inauguration on January 20, a move likely to drive up inflation. It's a global shift, a Reeves ally said. Fair enough. We've inherited a really difficult economic picture. The public finances were scorched by the Tories and economic growth has been sluggish for a decade. Well, yeah, that's because they never actually implemented austerity. But UK gilt prices are rising further and faster than others in comparable economies, and many in the city think Reeves' decisions since July have made the situation worse, not better. Well, really? What a shock. It's not like some of us online were saying this for ages, and yet this was all being ignored by the people who should know better and actually get paid to comment on these sorts of things. She's lost credibility with the financial markets, said a former Downing Street aide who now advises leading businessmen. They don't think she knows what she's doing. Again, who was saying that before she got elected? They don't believe a word she says. They don't believe she has any idea how to fix this. Gilt yields are going across the West, but it's a beauty parade and Britain is regarded as the ugly duckling you can pick on. People expect the OBR to revise down growth figures and revise up debt. Thanks Labour, and thank you everyone who voted Labour. I hope winning feels really good. Anyway, Reeves boarded a plane on Friday for China where she hopes to announce £600 million in inward investment. Privately, however, sources close to the Treasury say Chancellor is very depressed that her reputation for prudence has been so quickly destroyed. Why did she ever have that reputation? Why did she have that reputation? Nothing she said gave her that reputation from what I can see. Again, it's just another reason that our commentary class need to be completely destroyed, because they genuinely thought this. They genuinely thought that she would have a reputation for prudence. Why? I guess because she was Labour. But no, everything she was saying, things that I was seeing her say during the election campaign and before, they made me think things weren't going to be great. I didn't think they'd be this bad, but I knew they weren't going to be any better than the Tories. And they claim she can't see a way out. Oh, well, that's going to put confidence in the UK market, isn't it? One source said she's got choices to make and she knows they're all S. A Prime Minister's question on Wednesday, Reeves appeared pale, drawn and tired as Sir Keir Starmer's side. I mean, to be fair, she's looked like that for months at this point. Anyway, the official line is obviously very different from Labour. Aides say Reeves is not depressed but determined. In a meeting of the Treasury's Growth Committee on Monday, she said, "This is a reminder of the scale of the challenge we inherited and the urgency in taking action." Oh, come off it. It is not the Tories who put gilt yields to 5%. Yes, they went up to 4.7 odd with Liz Truss, but Sunak brought them down again. By the way, I'm not even against gilt yields going up if you actually have the supply side reforms that are actually reliant on profits going up and therefore tax revenue going up, and so you don't need to borrow as much. But that isn't the plan here, is it? The plan here was still to borrow more, as you basically said to Rory Stewart on his only good interview. So, honestly, blaming the Tories at this point, just embarrassing. I knew they wouldn't stop, because they're useless. We need to go further and faster, we need to get this sorted. However, allies did not disguise the fact that the flatlining growth figures, sticky inflation and deterioration in the public finances have spread frustration in government between Reeves and other ministers. The things that Rachel has been pushing for are just not happening quick enough, said one political confidant. Oh, thank God for that. It could be much worse then. She's deeply frustrated about it. She's demanded that things happen quicker. God, thank God for the civil service being slow for once. One key focus is changing in the planning rules, which Reeves regarded as one of the most effective domestic levers she can pull to stimulate the economy. It's probably true, to be fair. On Tuesday and Wednesday, Reeves met number 10 officials, plus Angela Rayner and Matt Pennycock, the minister responsible for the planning reforms. She also spoke to Lucy Powell, the leader of the Commons, to ensure the bill goes through quickly. Once it is introduced, Reeves wants to get it an airing to Parliament before the OBR report in March so progress can be demonstrated. It's kind of, again, this is just how much the civil service are in charge. They drag their feet crazily. Putting through planning reform like this that is supposed to be your flagship growth plan kind of should be put through in a couple of weeks. It shouldn't take months. It shouldn't only be happening 6 months down the road from when they got in. But this is how slow the civil service are, because they need to check everything. Treasury sources say relations are strong between Reeves and Rayner, the two most senior women in government, and also happen to be two of the worst ministers we've probably ever had, and that Rayner and Pennycook are really good in their roles and getting on with it. But there are clearly frustrations on the political side at the foot dragging by the civil service. Wow, was Liz Truss right? I can't believe it. Liz Truss was right. You want to scream, for Christ's sake, let's get this going, to some of them, a Whitehall advisor said. Well, that's what some of the Tories did, and you wanted them out for bullying, so, yeah. Good one. The friction extends to relations with other members of the cabinet. Not all ministers are taking growth seriously enough, a senior figure said. Part of Rachel's frustration is that the economy is seen as an issue for the Treasury. Getting economic growth is not one department's job, it's everyone's job. Yeah, this is probably why the cabinet should be cut down as well. Reeves has already demanded 5% savings from all departments as part of the comprehensive spending review. Hey, that was a reform policy, which we'll report in June. The deterioration in the government's position means it is now highly likely that Reeves will now demand deeper cuts. Just completely cut some departments. Why do we need a Women and Equalities department? Do we need it, Rachel Reeves? Of course we do, because it gets you in this position. Unbelievable. This has other ministers worried and angry. We have responsibilities to deliver manifesto commitments and the Treasury keeps saying no to things. Another minister complained. People trusted Rachel to deliver a solid base on which to build, but it doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, it's what happens when you run into reality. Reeves has few options. She could tweak her fiscal rules to say she would deliver it in the end of a rolling 5-year period rather than 2029, a trick used by George Osborne when he was Chancellor. Treasury aides are emphatic this will not happen, and visiting the bicycle maker Brompton's Beijing store on Saturday, Reeves declared the fiscal rules laid out in the budget are non-negotiable. She's really got to stop shooting herself in the foot. I'm just going to read this whole thing because it's just incredible the things that are being reported. In the budget, Reeves set out a 4.3% increase in spending this year and a 2.6% rise in 2025-2026, with budgets only set to increase by 1.3% a year after that. I want you to bear in mind that according to Sky News, when they went through all of the budgets set out by all the manifestos, Labour was only supposed to increase by a few billion. We're talking single-digit billions. And yet the tax rises have had to go up by at least 40 billion. And they can keep blaming the Tories for the 22 billion black hole. But again, I've been through it loads of times. At least 9 billion of that was alone for the public sector pay rises that Labour put forward. In other words, it's just all nonsense. They lied to you. That's all you need to know. Market watchers say this squeeze in public money toward the end of the Parliament was already regarded with huge suspicion by city traders. For her to go back to markets and say we'll cut even deeper won't be credible, the city advisor said. This seems to be understood by the Treasury. A source close to Reeves said, "It's what Jeremy Hunt did time and time again. People stopped believing him," and they don't believe Reeves on the first time around. Reeves has also ruled out further tax rises. That leaves another spending squeeze. Further welfare cuts are being considered, but there are huge pressures. Starmer and Reeves are also under pressure from Trump to set out a timetable to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP, something that could cost £20 billion. Trump is actually calling for NATO countries to spend 5% annually. Rachel Reeves takes Rishi Sunak's view as Chancellor that the MOD getting $55 billion a year is a very profligating thing, she said. Close to senior commanders, said a source close to senior commanders. It's just a mess for her. Don't get me wrong, the economy definitely is already broken, and it's due to a mixture of New Labour's policies along with Tories carrying on said policies. Don't get me wrong, Tories absolutely do get some blame for this, but going in on your high horse saying we'll be the sensible ones for the economy, and then managing to actually do worse than the Tories is actually quite impressive. And here comes the best part. The big question, however, is whether Britain's first female Chancellor will still be in the post by the autumn. I mean, it just, if anything else, it just goes to show how stupid and pointless and terrible DEI hires are. You know, think Margaret Thatcher. She was voted in 10 times, and the only reason she stopped being Prime Minister is because elites in the Tory party were getting fed up with her, basically because she was too good, but also putting through a few policies that, let's say, were a little too ambitious. Reeves' limited options have in part been imposed on herself. She was the author of the fiscal rules. She spent far more than expected on the budget at the time when Trump winning was easily foreseeable. Now, that one I don't really think is necessarily fair. Everyone in her circles and everyone she listens to, you know, people like Rory Stewart, let's say, were pretty certain that Kamala Harris was actually going to win because the people that they were talking to were only saying they were going to vote for Kamala Harris. Don't get me wrong, it was foreseeable that Trump was going to win, but Rachel Reeves, I simply do not think she has the brain to actually look at, all the time really, to look into this herself, so she just trusts other people's words, and those people are idiots. So, again, I have some sympathy on that end of things. In Tory circles, she is seen as the architect of her own demise. A former Tory cabinet minister said she and Darren Jones brought it all on themselves. Talking down the economy at the start and delaying the budget so long was catastrophic. She borrowed too much when Trump was always likely to drive up interest rates. They thought inflation would keep coming down and that everything was the fault of the stupid Tories. Yeah, blaming the Tories only gets you so far. It got you an election. You actually need to do something when you're elected, though. The names circulating as the next Chancellor include Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, who is perceived as hawkish. So funny. Rachel Reeves, not even in the position for a year as the first woman Chancellor, has to be replaced by a man. That'd be so funny. But naming him would be tantamount to Starmer choosing his successor. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who was Chief Secretary to the Treasury under Gordon Brown, would be a contender, but the firm favourite is Pat McFadden, the Cabinet Office Minister, who is close to Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. McFadden, the ultimate safe pair of hands, knows his way around the numbers, having been Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury between 2021 and 2023. Amazing. We are openly talking about replacing the Chancellor. Not even 6 months. Was it over 6 months? When was it? July? It's over 6 months. Just over 6 months since the Labour Party got into power. Just embarrassing. Whoever is Chancellor will have to wrestle with structural problems. Some say the Treasury itself is still underpowered after the department of senior mandarins Tom Scholar and John Kingsman. Others point to the absence of number 10 of anyone meaningful Treasury or economic experience. Even Treasury people say Starmer should get his own chief economic advisor. Imagine saying that. Imagine being told by civil servants, yeah, none of you really understand economics. Right, Starmer, you really need an economic advisor. Imagine being told that after, effectively, everyone on that side was supporting Labour and thought, yep, their manifesto's pretty good. All of a sudden it's turned around and they don't understand economics, they need economic advisors, for God's sake. It goes to show how useless the upper brass of our elites are. They just don't think. It's just this whole trust in the process and things will be okay that they don't seem to put effort into actually making things work. They just have these rules that are written down with what their jobs are, and they just carry on doing it without realising sometimes you might need to go outside that to actually improve things. And then you end up in this situation where they all support Labour and then say, wow, Labour actually don't have any idea how the economy works. Yeah, a lot of us Twitter anons knew that. This Times article ends in a spectacularly skewering fashion. At the heart of these observations is a suspicion that Starmer himself lacks the grip needed to turn the country around. Wow, really? Once again, Twitter anons vindicated. Whitehall insiders say Downing Street was shocked last week by the backlash against Bridget Phillipson plans for schools. The Education Secretary is widely seen as being about to dismantle the successive academies created by New Labour and supercharged by Michael Gove. The plans were condemned by the Blair-era minister Dame Siobhan McDowell as a huge mistake. Even Tony Blair's side are saying, Starmer, what the hell are you doing? In the city, again, biggest majority that I've ever seen in my life, it turns out actually barely 30% of the electorate actually voted for them, which again is thanks to the split in the right, which you can blame Reform for all you want, but frankly, Tories had their chance. But then not only that, the people that thought he would be like Blair turn out they are completely mistaken as well. Well, who knew all this? Well, channels like mine, people on the online right, you know, for all the problems they have complaining about reform, they understood that Labour were going to be absolutely devastating. Well, most of us did, I suppose. There's certain academics out there who who just turn out to be completely wrong on this. In the city, they think Starmer wants freedom to manoeuvre if Reeves is unable to salvage the situation. The markets think Starmer will use her for the March statement and the spending review, all the tough stuff, and then bin her. The former number 10 advisor said, I think they're affording Starmer too much political nous, but that's what he should do. And this is the best ending to this article I could ask for. The best hope then for Starmer's government is that Reeves is good at economics. Well, that's definitely not true. The best hope for Reeves' survival is that Starmer is bad at politics. Which he is. Place your bets. I mean, the subtext of that last paragraph is superb. Effectively, what this article has said at the end there is, right, Reeves and Starmer are both so bad at their jobs, we don't actually really know what's going to happen. However, it wouldn't shock me with everyone complaining about Rachel Reeves now that Starmer does end up getting rid of her. I think generally the number 10 advisor is pretty much on the money by effectively saying he's going to use Reeves as a cat paw to once again say the economy's in the bin and then get rid of her. I think that is actually the most likely scenario, and I don't think that's going to necessarily be Starmer's decision, but Starmer just, again, doing what his advisors tell him to do, which really is a good summary of what Labour's time in office has been so far, doing what other advisors have told them to do, and it turns out those advisors suck as well. Anyway, Rachel Reeves is so bad at a job that ChatGPT has ended up doing half of it. So Rachel Reeves has started using artificial intelligence to reply to emails using new software rolled out by the Treasury. I mean, how depressed would you be if it turns out your job can just be done by AI? Ministers and MPs have increasingly turned to AI to manage inboxes swollen by messages from the public and interested groups to provide fast, personalised responses. A tool launched by the Treasury staff in December uses OpenAI software to sift thousands of emails for those that are high priority, high risk, or requesting meetings with ministers. It's fine to use AI for that sort of thing, to be fair. The corresponding triage automation tool is used for automatic matching of correspondence with appropriate standard responses. That's where you might have a bit of an issue with AI for now, but having said that, AI is still very good. Tests carried out by the department showed that the tool had an accuracy of 7%, which was performing good or better than existing processes. I mean, if you want a vision of the future, this is genuinely going to be one of them. AI is just going to do better at this donkey work than your average person will, because your average person just doesn't want to be sat in an office looking at a screen, sifting through thousands of emails and saying this is high, this is low, when an AI can do all that in half the time. Probably not even half the time, probably closer to like 100th of the time, but still. Having said that, this isn't actually a terrible decision from the Treasury and Rachel Reeves as far as I'm concerned, but obviously people are going to come across this and say, oh, Reeves is being lazy. Well, if she's using AI to reply to high priority emails, yes, I would agree with that, but those that are low priority, it's fine, just use AI for that. If you want to see the Treasury being completely moronic, though, Britain is offering to pay Mauritius $9 billion over 99 years as part of a renegotiated deal to hand over sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. The UK's offer includes a lump sum covering the first several years of the payment to lease back Diego Garcia, a strategic US military base in the Indian Ocean. Negotiators are scrambling to sign the deal before the inauguration of Donald Trump on January 20th. Because, yeah, Trump doesn't want this. I mean, I don't really need to go into detail on this. I've covered this story a couple of times. But this is how ridiculous the Labour government genuinely are. I mean, you know, including all the stuff I just read from that article about Rachel Reeves being kicked out of the government soon. Everyone, by the way, is on board, for some reason, with paying Mauritius to take our land. This is something so ridiculous that it's actually hard to get normies to believe this is real. Normies just don't believe that the Labour Party would be this stupid, but they are. Because the obvious initial question is, why aren't they paying us? And obviously the reason is for this military base, to which obviously then the next question is, why would we bother paying Mauritius to rent out the US's military base? And also, why are we doing this if Donald Trump doesn't want to do it? Which are all questions that I simply cannot answer beyond, well, from the looks of it, they want better relations with other African nations. To which the obvious question to that is, why does it require us to look like complete muppets who will give them whatever they want, plus more? Which are all very good questions, and I simply just do not have a sensible answer to anything about the Chagos Islands, I'm afraid. It's something that is apparently happening. I'm just flabbergasted, there's nothing more to it. It also doesn't help that when I wrote to my MP about not giving the Chagos Islands away because it's stupid, the reply was basically, oh, don't worry about it, we're going through the deal and it won't be that bad. You know, trust me bro type thing, which, given that I asked my MP to write to David Lammy directly voicing my concerns, she didn't actually do that. Needless to say, I have a Labour MP like 60% of the rest of the country, so it's pretty obvious why this has ended up happening, and, well, as it turns out, I'm going to have to do everything I can to make sure that she doesn't win the seat again. And if I were you, I'd hope that this government collapses as soon as possible so we can have another election. I mean, we're basically at a point where I think the Reform Party could actually do pretty well in an election, to the point they could even probably win it, according to some polls. So yeah, that's a really white-pilling thing. Anyway, I think I've covered enough of this topic for now. Labour are useless, who knew? But going into the details of it, it's just utter farcical and collapse over there in number 10. You love to see it, really. They've not even been in power a year. It took over a decade for the Tories to get to this point, with a massive split about Brexit. And even then they look more competent than Labour do now. It's pretty fantastic when you think about it. Props to the Tory party for that. But anyway, that's all I had for you for today. So, shill time. Tomorrow it's Tosh News. We've got a full panel for that, so do come along to it. Saturday it's Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming. Videos out as and when I can make them. If you like what I do, please do subscribe, leave a comment, leave a like. All that stuff you can do for free, and it really helps out the channel. But if you think I deserve more than that, starting from £2 a month, you become a member. It's just to donate. Your name goes in the description. Why not? Or if you think I've done particularly well on a video or stream, you can also super chat and super thanks in the comments. Totally up to you, though. But with that, as I said, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.